Okay, so we are here on 22nd PC Open discussion. We are doing pretty well. And we have two, as in, I have two questions. I received two questions during this week. So we'll quickly go through them and then we'll continue from where we left last time about the API or web service export and import. For the next week, feel free to add questions if you have any. We all will love to discuss those questions. I already have an open request from Manish, which came, I guess, 4 hours ago or something. I'll try that. I haven't used that ever, so I'll try that. Okay, let's go through the normals. Uh, where do you register? You register here. It updates every week, and people who are in this meeting can just add their name and their email address if they don't want to go through the hassle of registering every week, and I'll make them default attendee for all the future meetings. And in future, if you want to opt out, you can just let me know and I can opt you out. Okay, so let's see what questions we have. There are some big questions this time. Two questions from Aniket, and both of them are big, and I don't see Aniket here. And then we'll come back to our API stuff that we were discussing. This is about upgrading to BC SaaS from NAV 2016, and the steps that you have done is upgrade to BC on-prem. Only fields we took as even keys in nav or causing not data deletion. That makes sense. Creation of replica tables for all custom data storage makes sense. Custom extension with customization of client makes sense. And then upgrade code unit to transfer data from CAL to AL. That makes sense. And do you follow the same approach? Any specific tool you would use to upgrade data on extension label data transfer? And he shared a link that he used. So Aniket, this is the kind of the similar process that we also follow in Archpoint when we do data migration from a CAL version to the AL version. And internally, we have an automated tool which can do all these replica table creations and everything automatically. And it even creates your kind of AL extension to store the data into those replica tables, and then it also writes the code which can transfer that data. But that's a tool built by Archpoint for Archpoint customers, so I can't share details. But yeah, the process that you have specified is the exact process that we also follow. Some people do recommend rapid start, which is not something that can be used for data upgrade if you're actually talking about a big data upgrade. So I think you're on the right path. There's nothing I guess I can suggest at this point.
So maybe like Saurav, are you using that PowerShell script to migrate the data?
No, as in we are still trying to marry. So the tool that we build in is kind of does the same thing, which is also here on this link. It kind of
Okay.
follows the same rule, but it does it automatically. You don't have to do things manually, like creation of these replica tables and all those things. And currently, what upgrade to team in Archpoint is doing is trying to marry that with the Microsoft steps, which is a little bit complex per se at this point. So our plan is to kind of marry our upgrade routine with the Microsoft routine so that it can run faster with the PowerShell queries and all.
Okay.
Okay, second one is again from Aniket, and that's the last question for today, and which is client is having an integration with their country tax portals which have code of encryption and decryption, which is advanced than the encryption management we have in current state of nav, like GST invoicing integration, where certificate has to be read to get a key and then get token and then all sort of activities to submit an invoice and being performed on a DLL. Okay, so I kind of get where you're going with that is about the .NET component. And then it's about how can Azure function help us to these functionality, and they are chargeable. Is there any other way to do it? And I know for a fact, and Gaurav sir is here. Gaurav, you have done something around this line where I'm not sure does it use Azure functions or not, but I haven't handled situations like this yet, or there's no requirement like this yet.
No, Saurabh, not used Azure function right now. We have used DLL, still DLL, but I think there are very few GSP who are providing this facility to use encryption and decryption while communicating to API. But
Oh,
almost GSP are using direct HTTPI with normal plain text.
okay, that makes sense.
This
Thanks.
is
Yeah, go
this
ahead.
is
Yeah,
Steve. I haven't done it with Business Central, but I think Azure Functions is a great option because I rely heavily on .NET in the Dynamics GP world.
yeah,
And if there are things that I don't want to have on-prem and I accessible to my multiple customers, or you want it SaaS based, Azure Functions is incredibly powerful, and C Sharp, and I would personally use a third-party DLL for encryption if that is a requirement, rather than trying to write your own. But
yeah.
you can use the ASP.NET Core add-ins on Azure Functions. It's a fantastic platform.
Yeah, and that makes sense. As in, these words used to be foreign in the nav word, and that made
Yep.
sense at that time because it was not, not a connected solution at that point. With Business Central, you can't just say that we live on-prem and just maybe for the cost or maybe for the complexity of Azure, you don't want to use it. That is, I guess, that's not the direction that anybody should go right now. It's a connected word, and to use a business solution like Business Central, you need to use all the uh, options that are available in the product, either it's Azure or Power Automates and things like that.
And to your point, I was just thinking the same thing. If Azure Functions is a little too complex, at least at first, Power Automate can theoretically do a lot of these things as well,
Yeah,
including calling Azure Functions. The encryption is probably a stretch for Power Automate, but yeah, for a simple web service and intermediating other web service calls, Power Automate can be a very interesting solution.
yeah. Plus, any government or authority that is using encryption and decryption on the tax portal, they would also be utilizing a service somewhere on the cloud to kind of encrypt and decrypt that data. So you also just need to check what they are doing and kind of follow the same thing, you know.
So as Saurabh said, there might be some recommendations, guidelines, some documents from the tax authority.
Right.
So I think, yeah.
Because that's important, as in you can't just be doing something in silo. You need to be connected to what the other party is using, and they use the same encryption and decryption services that they are using. And if it is chargeable, then it is chargeable, as in you can't just create something on your own just to save some some bucks over there. Okay, so those were only questions for this week, and then we come back to our old discussion that we were having last week. And Tanya posted some questions, and she's not here today. But her question was about, she liked the what we discussed last week, but she was kind of worried about the old version where temp table was there, and I intentionally didn't use the temp table because that's going away from Business Central, maybe next version. So let's just add one segment of code on the same extension, and let me clone this so that I don't save it in my local. Okay. And let me know if it is smaller. I'll increase the font size if required. Okay. Okay. Is this better? Anybody can confirm that they can see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. So this is where we were, and the problem that I guess she's facing is somewhere here where we are trying to import the attachment using the new way, which is temblob as a code unit. Okay, so let me first download symbols. Okay, and let me create a branch. Okay. So now what we want is on this to use it on a previous version of Nav or Business Central is that you want to import the attachment, but using the kind of the temblob table per se. So let's create a new procedure here. And let's make it global. And let's name it as import attachment old way. And the input is same as it is here. Let's do that. So we get that text value either from the page that we have in Business Central, or we get it from the API. And then instead of using temblob code unit, we'll use record temblob. Okay. Let's see when it is going away. It's tagged on 15.0. That means it will go in BC 17. Oh, no, tag 15.0. 1 year. 16, so 18, BC 18. Okay, we'll extract similar code here that if it is empty, it goes out. Otherwise, we need to kind of get this value converted to bit 64 and then get it imported into my attachment. So in the temblob table word, it should have been more easier than what we did. We will initialize the temblob, and then, oh, there is a function from base 64 string. And the parameters are a text value, which is here. And then we'll do a current record dot attachment that we have, and we'll get it from temblob.blob. So what this function does, it converts the string text string into the blob field and then stores it into the blob that is in the table. And then we kind of copy that blob from the temblob table to our current record that we have. So that's it on this one. Let's just to test it out. Let's add this action into that page. Okay, and there should be something as import attachment somewhere. Import attachment. Convert to blob. Okay. So I'll come in the new way and I'll say go to the old way and we'll pass the text value. So now this is using the older method. I didn't want to create a separate action for it just because we are just testing it. But otherwise you can also create a separate action for it if you want and then use that. So we'll just test this before we move to what we discussed last week about doing it from API rather than doing it from web services. So for that, what we'll do is we'll open our file to base64 and let's choose a file. And let's this time choose this new setting on service tier. Click on encode. We have the value. Let's copy this and okay, here our Business Central popped up. And let's insert a new record just to see that the old way still works. Okay, I did paste it, I guess. Okay. Now I'll click on convert to blob where we have changed it to run with the old way. And it should run now. Okay, uploaded. And let's click OK and we can see the image here. So Tanya, I hope that solves your problem to do it on BC14 or in the previous version of Dynamics Nav. Now, last time as we were discussing, we actually created a web service for this page while we are trying to run it from the Postman. So before we move forward, let's delete this and then we'll talk about our API option into it. Object type page, let me see, and that should be more than 50,000. So yeah, here it is. So let's delete this API attachment, web service, so that goes away. And now we will understand the API method, which is far more simpler than using the web services. So before we go to the API, let's understand certain parameters that we need to take care when we go through the API route for exposing or importing our data from outside. So on an API page, these are the 6 parameters which are super important because based on these parameters, you get the unique URL for your API page. And these parameters are the version of API that you're using, who is the publisher, what is the API group, what is the entity name and the entity set name, and the very important field on the API page is the OData key field. Other than OData key field, these all will be used in the unique URL that will be generated for your API page. And OData key field actually acts is a GUID field, which is unique for the record in that table. So in the previous version of Business Central, before BC17, you actually would have to add a custom field in your table of type ID, of GUID type, and then anytime you try to insert a record via API page, you'll have to initialize that value before it gets in. So we'll come to that, but this is how these parameters become important in the SaaS world. If you are using APIs on SaaS, then this becomes your URL, which is the base URL, and then your name, user domain name, then the keyword API, then the publisher, then API group, API version, and we'll talk about company ID in a while, and then at the end is entity set name. In the same way, it's a little bit different when you are working on the sandbox environment of your cloud, where you specify the tenant ID rather than your user domain name, and then specify the keyword sandbox, and rest of the URL is more or less same. Now coming down to our on-prem or to the Docker model where I was testing it, it's a little bit different where you'll have to kind of, if it is secure, you'll do HTTPS, mine is not. And then the container name, And then the port, that is OData port on your service tier. By default, it's 7048 if you're working on Dockers. If you have an on-prem environment, then it can be anything, and you need to check that before you use that URL here. Then your service name, which in Docker is kind of fixed to BC. In your on-prem installation, you can have a different service name. And then rest of the 4 parameters are same. So these are super important, and we already had an API page, which we earlier exposed as a web service, and this time we'll use it as an API. So let's see how these parameters will kind of generate API URL for the page that we have. So this is the API page that we have in our extension that we are working on from last week. It has API version, it has API publisher, it has an API group, entity name, entity set name. And if you look at this, OData key field is actually set to a field called system ID. Now, if you haven't heard about it, Microsoft have added 4 fields in every table, and one of them is system ID. And then 4 others are created by and created on and modified by and modified on. As far as they look good to so many developers that we'll be able to see when this record was modified and all, I think one of the major reason of adding those fields is to make the APIs super easy to kind of set them up, because now you don't have to create a GUID field on your table, because that will be by default there as system ID. While the external entity talks to Business Central, it also checks about the created date and modified date. And in the older versions of Business Central and Dynamics Nav, there was a table specifically who was maintaining this data called integration records. And if you have ever used APIs in the past, go and see the data in that table. There will be so many records. Any record that has been transferred between the system will have an entry on that table. So with the introduction of these 5 fields in every table, now that table is no longer required, because now every record can be uniquely identified with the creation date and modified date in the record itself. So based on this detail, my URL will be something like this, where BC171 US Sandbox is my Docker container name, 7048 is my port number, BC is my service name, my name is the publisher, and group is demo, and version is 1.0, and we'll come to companies in a while, how we get to this company. And then API attachment is the entity set name. Now, as you all understand that in a Business Central tenant, you can have one or more companies. So a minute ago, when I was talking about system ID, in the company information table, there is also a field called system ID, as it's in every table. So every company gets a unique GUID, and this is the GUID of my company in the Docker container, which is Cronus USA, and we'll see it in a bit. So I can actually get that GUID by either looking directly at the record or using this command on any, on the browser, or even using Postman or any of the services. This will list down all my companies, which is everything same, but nothing after this. It's just companies. So are there any questions before I actually get into that demo of API?
No, sir.
Okay. So let's come back to our page that we had. Okay. API page. So this is the same page. I just have to maybe change some parameter because I was testing something else last week. API attachments, and then version 1.0, name, demo, and attachments. So this becomes my API page. And if you see below here, there's a layout area where there is a repeater with the field ID, which is my system ID, which is also set on the OData key field, kind of the primary key identifier on this. And then the code, and then the extension that the external entity can pass, and then the text value, which then will be imported into the system. That's it. So this time, let's try to utilize the Postman, and without the web service that we have, let's try to consume first the initial URL to get the companies. If I click on this, okay. Okay, so let me type it in here in my Docker. Oh, sorry, in my Postman. I'll bring the Postman here. And it's HTTP BC171 US sandbox. This is my port number, and my service name, API, then the publisher over there, demo 1.0, and companies. And there was no response in this because what I did, let me check. Okay, I did change the name now, but I didn't publish this. So let me do that. Publish without debugging. And now with this, it should be able to understand that. Okay, let me copy this name. If I have my URL saved somewhere. Okay. So once I run the company one, I should see all, unauthorized. I'll have to use my basic authentication, which is already here. So now when I run this to get all the list of companies, I get a list of companies that are in my tenant. And then I get this ID, which is the default field that is added on every single table in the database. And as I was saying, there are other 4 fields which are also added in every table, which are system created at, by, modified, and modified by. So now when I know my company and I want to insert a record, I actually want to insert that record into Cronus USA. So I'll have to pick this and append that to my URL. And let me open Notepad so that I can do that here. Okay, and then in companies, I can actually copy the keyword have and paste it here, and then my API name attachment. So this becomes my API URL to access that API page, which I just published in the extension. If I try to get the records in it, I'll get all those 4 or 5 records, I guess 6 records in that Business Central environment where we just published the page that Tanya wanted, the record that Tanya wanted. API attachment. So if you'll see, there are 1026 records, and the same will be available here with code and extension. And if you have to insert a value back to your business central, you can actually use the same command, but this time not getting it, you are posting it. And while you are posting it, you need to give it an input data so that it gets imported. So we'll go to the body section. We'll do a raw body with JSON, and then I'll copy this structure so that I don't have to worry about it. I don't know the ID. I don't know the code. That's okay. And the unique code that I want to give to my record from here is 70, the type of JPEG. And let me open the bit to 64, select a new file. Okay. I'll just do the encoding and this should be ready. I'll copy this value, go back to my Postman, and on the input text that I'm trying to pass to my business central tenant, I'll paste that value. Once that is done, you have provided all the required field to input the value into it. You can just click send, and this will reply you that the value has been created with the code 70. So let's go back to our business central tenant and see what actually happened. So let me refresh this. And there's the new input from that API page, which was just created from from the Postman. Now, we already discussed about the download attachment, but will it make sense? And there was not request, but I guess we talked about it during the last week, to talk about exporting that data out. And let me go back there. Sending that a file out from Business Central, and the other party can receive it. And we'll use the same logic of bit64 convert. Anybody interested? Then we can talk about it. Otherwise, we can kind of leave it. That's not a problem. Oh, nobody's here, or
Oh, we are listening. It's not that no one is here. That's
okay.
not the case.
Yeah, so will import case is kind of export case is useful for anybody. Otherwise, we'll not waste time and we can talk about other things.
Maybe let's talk about other stuff.
Okay, that's not a problem.
If everyone is okay with that.
Manish, were you able to figure out how you will kind of do that? What, I guess because you said something about it. I'm not sure who talked about it last week, but we did talk about it. That I remember.
Okay, not about this. Yeah, temp blob. Yes, I send you the code about the temp blob, but I need to remove it. I mentioned that.
Yeah, because I was saying about the sending a kind of a 64-bit value out from Business Central to the Postman. I guess you said something around it.
Yes.
But yeah, let's talk about, and then if you are the only person interested, I can stretch it a little bit and we can complete that.
Okay, sir.
So maybe let's go through if anybody has anything. Starting from bottom, Steve.
Hey, I do have one question. It's kind of two parts. So I've received several requests. This is Business Central SaaS, where the customer, so far it's been on list pages. They'll say, I want to display this additional column on the list page. The column or the field is not available from personalized, so it requires a very small extension just to display the field on the list page. And In most cases, it's been pretty simple. The one exception so far has been the general ledger entries list page. The customer wanted to see source name. And the general ledger entry can have a source name value or source type of customer, vendor, employee. There are like 6 different types of records, and you need to query 6 different tables. And so I'm exploring that, and there are several ways to do that. There's a super simple way. You just display the field on the page by doing lookups against the tables, or you can get really fancy by creating a custom table, storing some values, and displaying the field from your custom table. So in general, what is your approach to requests like that, where it's not just simple exposing a field on a page, where there are multiple approaches from simple to complex? Do you typically just go with the simple because that's all the customer needs and it only takes an hour or two? Or the reason I ask is I received a good question. It's like, well, what if the customer also wants this field to show up on a report? And is there sometimes a way to architect this solution such that by having a custom table or a table extension, it makes it easier to add that field to a report? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I've seen those kind of requests in the past, and they are actually legal requests because your auditor, when they look at GL entries, they would like to see the source name from
Right.
where it is coming from. And
And to that point, exactly, if I only display the current vendor name or customer name, that if that vendor customer name changed in the last 12 months, all of my prior entries will show the current name, not the prior name.
that's
So
what I was coming to.
yep, is there an
Right.
incentive to store that value as that point in time? So yep, you're reading my mind.
Right. So normally and this is always only about ledgers. Nobody will request you such information in any transaction tables or so. So anytime we have done it in Nav or even in Business Central is to actually creating a field in the GL entry. I was following you on Twitter about the
Yep.
flow field identification, which is very good discovery about how you explore Nav or Business Central. Sorry. But at the same time, when we talk about the ledgers, you should actually have that value passed during the transaction.
Okay. To
Whenever
be
that,
stored.
yeah, whatever
Yep.
the value at that moment, if my GL account on that day had certain name, and if the auditor requests that name here, then if it changes, as you were saying, the changes should also reflect on the ledger if it is required for the auditing purposes.
Right.
And then you actually flow it from during the transaction, like I being a nav guy, code unit 12 and 20
Yep.
12 actually will give you instances where the GL entry is actually getting inserted.
Right.
And at that point you can have your subscriber to check what type of source it is, and then based on that fetch the name and put that into the transaction
Okay.
rather
Got it.
than lookup, because lookup will always reflect to the latest and the greatest value.
Excellent. Okay.
Okay, yeah, but it was pretty.
Well, and so
Yeah,
I think that approach makes a lot of sense. And so then does storing that and having that additional field as part of the GL entry table extension, does that in any way make a report modification easier? I
yes,
don't know
because
what
then
reports
it'll
they
be.
might.
Yeah, because then report modification, base Microsoft report modification, no.
Okay, because
They'll
you have to
they
create a
might
new
have
custom
to.
report anyway.
Yeah, because that field will not be available as of today, as in Microsoft is
Yep.
working on that report extension.
Extension. Yep.
But till then, it will not reflect over there on those
Okay.
reports, more or less.
Got it. So for a base out of the box report, there isn't necessarily a way, and whether I
Right.
call a code unit to get that value or whether I'm looking at an additional custom field, I still have to create a new report.
Yes, there
Got
is
it.
no
Okay.
other way because we
Yep.
can only change the layout and that's.
Yep. Okay.
But
Cool.
yeah, it was interesting the way you are learning it, and I actually went back and refreshed my memory about the flow fields and flow filters, which is super cool. So keep doing that. If we can help you here, why not? On these sessions, if you have something like that where we can also refresh our memory when you're learning it, I'll be happy to help you. We all will
Awesome.
be. That's not
Awesome.
okay. Okay, Nishant, you have something for us today?
No, sir, no.
Okay, Manish.
No, Saurabh. I think I've already mailed you for the next week.
Okay, now it's email weeks. Okay, not a problem. Okay, couple.
No, as of today.
Okay, got it.
Hello.
Nothing major, Saurabh. Okay.
Okay. Dharmendra.
I have
Oh, sorry.
one question.
Go ahead.
So, how we can show the pictures, the attachment pictures, and we are having picture of contact or something. So in a nav, we were able to stretch it in the whole page.
Right.
But in Business Central, system is not allowing to show on the complete page. So if we are dedicating one fast tab, even
Mhm.
a huge area for that image, but system is still showing a small picture. So is there any way to zoom out the image?
Um. Hmm. I never tried that, but I'll surely check it. Did you try it with the tile mode? Does that help? Because tiles have different options, right? I understand what you're saying that it should be on the complete page,
Yes,
but
yes.
with the zooming, let me see how big the tile actually goes. No, that's not full page more or less, but what if I zoom it because it's a browser? Oh, it just zooms the record, not the picture. Okay, I understand. You kind of want to have this picture in the whole page if possible, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, I'll surely check that. I have a note of it now. Anything else, sir?
Nothing, Saurabh.
Okay, thank you. Dharmendra, you have something? And I don't know. Brajendra, if I'm speaking it right.
Yes,
Hello.
sort of. Yeah. So basically, I think you might have covered in previous sessions, but I have a question related to current page dot update. And
Mm-hmm.
basically, what is happening in AL extension, if you are extending a page into the AL and that the current page dot update is not working. So is any specific why it was not working, or is there any workaround to use the current page dot update into the AL extensions?
Current page dot update is not working in
AL,
when you're
if you're
creating a new page or a page extension.
a page extension,
Uh, Saurabh,
maybe
can I
just
say
take the
something on this?
Go ahead, Manish.
Uh, are you getting any error while using that in
no,
code?
no, because I'm not getting any error because what I was trying, like I'm just based on Boolean field, I want to enable or disable the page.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the reason. If I have added a new button on the ribbon, maybe based on that, like close. So when I click on the close button, that time the
Mm-hmm.
page should be disabled.
Is it the standard page you are extending or is it the
Standard
custom
page,
page?
standard page.
Okay, okay. Because I have checked that, I have experienced this also. In my case, I was facing the issue of reward the changes. I was getting the error every time whenever I use the current page dot update. So what I did current page dot update false. So it worked for me.
For me, it was, I tried every option, but it was not working. So I thought that something has been changed in the AL.
Okay.
Okay, let me actually try this out. I haven't faced it. So if you go ahead, sir, you have something?
Yeah,
So, Saurabh, am I audible?
Yeah.
Um, Saurabh, I think you have extensively worked on upgrades. So I was about to write a blog on this, but I thought of discussing with you.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever faced issue in importing record links during the upgrade?
You have to import record links from where?
Like you are upgrading from X version to Y version, higher version from Nav to Business Center or something, and
Right.
you want to move or migrate or some way you want to import the record links, the attachments or record links. You know that, right?
Right.
So have you faced any issue in that?
So normally, if it is actually stored in the record link, then there will never be a problem till you reach BC14 or you switch from Windows to web client. Because at
Okay.
that point, the web client cannot understand the client drives. Like it cannot understand my C drive or D drive, because a modern client can run on a phone or on a tablet or on a laptop, you know. So those links kind of become broken every time you move from a Windows client to a
No. I'm not going into that link is broken or not. Means I'm
okay.
just saying that if you have, let's say, talk about this. If you have data record links in Excel or somewhere, you have that data.
Right.
And
So
did you ever try importing that
yes,
something?
there are two times where I have did it. One is when an add-on was actually changing the way how they store records. Earlier they used to store in a blob, and now they wanted to store in a file server with the link generated into the record link table. That was case one.
Okay.
So I have written the script so that it exports out those blobs in a folder, get the
Mhm.
link, the shared link, and then update the record link. The other time where I've done it is, I don't remember the version, but I'm
Uh,
pretty sure that there is a blog about it already.
yeah. So that's I think that's maybe we are talking about the same blog. So we were facing some issue in importing that, and it says that using XML port you cannot import a record ID, data type record ID.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So that was the issue. So I thought. Yeah, and then I found when means I don't know the history part, but record ID, every table has a record ID system generated kind of field. So since which version this is there?
it's actually not a, as an, it's a field. I've seen it way back in Nav 4, and maybe Steve you'll find this interesting. But what is a record ID is, it's actually stores your
Primary key.
table
Yeah,
number and all the values of your primary key.
primary key. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So it actually acts as a unique record identifier for these kind of system tables.
Right.
Okay. If you are on BC14 CAL version, then there is actually a code unit where this logic of decrypting a record ID is already available, which is very simple. Okay. And that
Mm-hmm.
is, let me see, it is data type management or something like that. Yes, this is the code unit, data type management.
Data type management. Okay. Code
Okay.
unit 701. Okay.
This gets a variant. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when it gets a variant, it actually gets the record a ref out of it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also checks that while it is getting the record ref, because it's a variant, it checks, is it a record that you're passing to it? Because it's a variant, you can pass anything. Is it a record ref or is it a record ID? So if it is a
Okay.
record ID, then it breaks it like this.
Interesting.
And in version 2009 and before, if you have a record ID field in your table and you run that table, you can actually will be able to read the data from that field when you run the table. Starting
Mm-hmm.
nav 2013, it comes as a star, as an a hidden character.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that kind of field is also used in, I don't know now it is there or not, but in the change log entries, because it also need to identify uh, the unique record that it is being stored for. So this
Mm.
also uses the field of type record ID. And I have written that blog where you can export it using a data port from an older version and then import it in the similar structure into the new version and then run a code unit which can make it a record ID again.
Oh,
So it
okay.
splits it up and then joins it up. I'll have to find that blog, but I'm pretty sure it's there. I got stuck with that situation once.
Mhm. So
Okay.
this 701. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, 701, have a look on that. If you get stuck, let me know. We can surely talk about it.
And this API thing,
Yeah.
when we are doing it through Postman, does it take current client type as OData v4 or does it take it as API only?
It's right now taking it as OData v4 as far as I remember.
Yeah,
But
that's
this
my
will,
observation.
yeah, but this will get replaced, and maybe it's replaced in BC17 with an actual API. Uh, I'll have to see, but I know in the previous version before BC17, it was kind of taking it as OData v4.
But that's not related to during testing Postman. It means while using as API also for integration purpose, it will take as a OData v4 or not API. Is that the correct?
No, it will take API when you are doing this. So if you see right now, it's an API string. It's not that I haven't published it as a web service, so I don't have a OData v4.
No,
No.
but if you 1 second, if you try to get the current client type, I think it will give you OData v4.
Oh, I'll have to check that.
So
Okay.
even Saurabh, you can see OData context and OData e tag in response.
Oh, yeah, right.
Then it is
Oh,
taking OData.
So if somewhere you add a error, means something like a simple thing error and %1 and current client type, then you will get it as a OData v4, I think.
yeah, and as Gaurav sir is saying that you see these OData tags, that means it's actually interrupt, behind the scene, it's kind of translating it to OData v4. Okay, that's good to know. I didn't knew this. That's good.
And one thing
Well,
more, which reminds me, last time also we discussed, we were going to web service page and there we were adding this and all that. So while we are talking about this generating this URL through those 6 properties which you talked about.
yeah,
So can you just try once again, is that really required? If you delete it from there, will it work or will it not work?
it will not. And if you remember, when I did this,
You tried last time and
yeah,
it
no,
was not
no,
working.
now, no, from the web services, I have deleted it. The first thing that I did is I deleted from the web services.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
So last time, yeah,
right.
during last session, it was not working,
Because
right?
last time it was web services. This
Okay.
URL was pointing to the web service URL, not to
Yeah,
the API URL that we just saw today.
fine. Yeah.
And Vijendra, not to cut you off, you were saying something. I guess Oh yeah, I was going. The last thing I remember I said is I'll try that out to
Yeah,
kind of have action of enable and disable the page,
yeah,
maybe on a standard page. So if you
yes.
can make next week here, we can. And if I'm able to do that, I'll surely talk about it.
Okay.
Anything else, Vijendra?
No, that's all. Thanks, Saurabh.
Okay. Anyone else have anything? Okay
No,
then.
Saurabh.
Okay, Manish, if you want me to do that today, I can do it here after this. Everybody leaves, you can sit. That's not a problem. The import part, sorry, the export part of sending that data out to API, that image thing. Or if you want it on the Git, I'll complete that and I'll put it into the Git and you can pull it from there. Either ways work.
Both will work for me. It's okay. It's time is up. I'll get it from there.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you, Saurav.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Saurabh.
Thanks, Saurabh.
Yeah, talk to you
Thanks
next
a
week.
lot. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.